We are excited today to talk about SD-WAN and internet reliability and really understanding how you can have super stable, reliable internet at home while you're working at home, but also in your traditional office. My name is Taylor Wells. I'm the Director of Strategy here at NW Techs. We are an advisory firm focused on helping small and medium-sized organizations with their technology. One of the main areas we help companies is bringing in awesome vendors and providers like Bigleaf Networks. They're an SD-WAN solution. I'm joined today by Tim, and we're excited to talk to Tim about SD-WAN in general, internet reliability, and then also their solution in particular and how that looks. I'm gonna pass it over to Tim, and Tim, thanks so much.
Hey, Taylor, thank you. So we want to talk this morning about reliable internet at home and in the office. Obviously, the need for reliable internet at home has spiked significantly over the last couple of months with a lot of the mandated work from home. So we're going to address how to not only have reliable internet in the office, but at home as well. And, you know, Taylor, when the internet was created, it started out as kind of a virtual library. Just a lot of text going back and forth. And when you think about that versus today, what the internet was originally created for didn't have a lot of complexity. It was just passing, virtual text. There wasn't a lot of, images or video or anything. But in today's environment, it's changed significantly. And one of the things that has really created a significant need for just better internet is the explosion of the cloud. For years, businesses had everything on premise in their office, and they just needed to connect there locally. And although that worked, it provided limitations because you couldn't collaborate as easily. There wasn't a lot of flexibility. It was hard to connect to the office. And then in the issue of outages, there wasn't really any failover. So the cloud has provided a lot of functionality and a lot of additional capabilities, but leveraging the internet to connect to the cloud now means your internet needs to be more stable than ever. And you need to have the ability to connect to all of the applications used to run your business. Looking at this chart here, it starts out on individual level, things like Join Me or LinkedIn, individual employees, up to a departmental level, things like your CRM or go-to meetings or like this Zoom session.
Hey, Tim, I don't believe you're showing your screen. I think it got shut out. Do you want to start presenting again?
Yeah, I apologize.
No worries. There we go.
Okay.
We just lost you on this last screen, so this is perfect.
Okay, perfect. So, the cloud, this explosion of the cloud, and every company is on a cloud journey. The individual level with, Join Me in LinkedIn, departmental level, things like CRMs or this Zoom meeting, and then company-wide mandates where you get into, like voice over internet. Everybody's using it in the office, Office 365, the Microsoft suite, and then cloud first, company-wide mandate, taking all of your infrastructure, all of your applications and putting them in the cloud so that they can be accessed from anywhere, and you can have multiple redundant connections or feeds or replications of that in case one of them were to go down. But with that, the internet is more important than ever before for businesses to be able to run and operate. The flexibility is great, but the internet is kind of an unknown. I mean, it's the one thing you can't control. So what are some of the issues that people have in the office with their internet? Well, the internet goes down. We know it's technology. No technology is perfect. And the way that everything connects, the internet does go down. We have things like brownouts, which is where the circuit's still up, but it goes into a temporary unusable state for a myriad of different reasons. Dropped calls, you talk to anybody in an office environment, they've had an issue where the phone's dropped in the middle of a call with somebody, frozen video, and then just unusable applications, not being able to connect to the applications they use to run their business, which obviously leaves users frustrated. But when you get into the home office environment, you add another level of complexity because you have different individuals. In an office environment, you have different people using different applications, but they're usually a similar goal. Everybody's doing something for the business, unless you have somebody in the break room, during lunch on YouTube. But at home, we have this whole new level of complexity. Number one, you're trying to run business over best effort residential internet connections. As everybody knows, that's less reliable than what you have in the office typically. And you can see in the graphic here, you have one parent trying to do a Zoom video session like this out of a bedroom, another parent trying to do Office 365 in an office, and then you have somebody running Netflix and somebody running Disney Plus. Well, the pull on the internet at home, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have said, I just tell my kids not to get on the internet during my workday. And I go, how does that work? Like, that's pretty much impossible, especially because kids are doing work online as well. This is how they're doing their schoolwork. So it's created new challenges because everybody's trying to do this. Beyond that, because of the way that the residential internet connections are created, everybody's on a shared pipe. It comes back to a centralized place. And because everybody's pulling at once, I've read reports that people are getting 40 and 50% less throughput over their home internet than they traditionally would, because everybody's there, everybody's at home, everybody's pulling from it at the exact same time. So the next thing to share, what this really leads to is you need to find a way to optimize your internet. Everybody talks about more bandwidth, more bandwidth, more bandwidth. The problem is more bandwidth doesn't always solve the issue. And it doesn't always solve the issue because there's spikes of usage all throughout the day that can still cause problems, especially for mission critical applications. A lot of what we use to run our business doesn't take a lot of bandwidth, but you throw in something that's doing a download or an update or streaming at home, and all of a sudden it crushes something like this Zoom video session. So there's a statistic that came out a little while ago that 80% of all the businesses out there need to optimize their internet to have better functionality, but only 5% are asking about. This is something that really there needs to be more education around. So the solution for optimizing internet connectivity is SD-WAN. Many people might have heard that phrase, but might not be quite clear on what it is. So what is SD-WAN? Software-defined wide area networking. Sounds simple, right? So what does that mean though? What is software-defined wide area networking? It's leveraging software to simplify the management and operation of the WAN, of the wide area network. It's utilizing software to simplify the management of the internet. SD-WAN helps provide control for internet connectivity and traffic over the internet, something that people do not have today. So why is SD-WAN important? What are all the things that SD-WAN solves? First, quality of service. Quality of service is being able to prioritize specific traffic over other traffic. For instance, right now, we're on this Zoom video session. This is being prioritized over my 4-year-old watching streaming in the other room. And I have 2 teenagers that I guarantee if they're awake yet, they're streaming right now also. So we're still able to communicate seamlessly. Also with SD-WAN, it allows you the ability to leverage multiple connections simultaneously. So our equipment, you can actually plug up to 4 internet connections into our router, and it will actually leverage all of them at the same time and be able to pass traffic flow in and out utilizing all of them. Also, it provides the ability to fail over. So what happens if traffic's going down an internet circuit and that circuit goes down? You don't want to lose that traffic. With SD-WAN, it allows you to take that traffic and push it onto another circuit if in a multiple circuit environment, so that you don't lose that traffic flow. Visibility into your WAN. What does that mean? SD-WAN gives you the ability to see what's going on with your internet connections. It allows you to be able to see when there's an issue, and services like ours will actually proactively notify you when you're having an internet problem. And in many cases, when you have multiple internet connections, you don't even know that you're having an internet problem, because it just fails over to the next circuit without any issues. The next one, second from the bottom, better cloud application performance. As I talked about in the beginning, companies are utilizing the cloud. They're utilizing SaaS applications. They're utilizing Office 365. They're utilizing hosted voice. SD-WAN helps provide control over the internet and gets you the ability to connect to the applications you're using to run your business better, whether it be in your office or out of your home. It allows that connectivity to be more seamless and more efficient. And then provides control over the internet. The one thing that you don't have control over in everything that you're utilizing to run your business, and from a technology perspective, I shouldn't say the one thing, because technology does fail from time to time, but I would say the thing you have the least connectivity over, or the least control over, is your internet connection. When you're having problems with the internet, everybody calls that same 1-800 number of whoever the carrier is. They wait on hold, they try to talk to somebody and wait for it to get resolved. SD-WAN with multiple connections allows you to not have to worry about that. Even with a single connection, like out of the house, provides control over that connection. It provides the ability to prioritize specific traffic. And I'd like to kind of just share an analogy of what SD-WAN does. Specifically our SD-WAN with this dynamic QoS prioritization and the fact that we manage 100% of the traffic. Taylor, think of the internet as a dirt road. And, when we first created cars, we cleared spaces for them with dirt roads. And when we only had 2 or 3 cars on the roads, it didn't matter. It worked. But as cars became more and more common, the dirt roads were no longer sufficient. We tried to widen the dirt roads. Everybody talks more capacity with the internet. Problem is, with a dirt road, it can wash out in the rain. You can have potholes. It can become very difficult for traffic to get back and forth. And in bad conditions, it created accidents at a much higher rate because everybody's trying to get traction in dirt. And the same thing can be said of the internet as a whole, and the way that it all connects. It is, for lack of a better term, it's a dumb internet pipe. It doesn't have intelligence around it. It's just passing traffic back and forth, but there's no intelligence. What our technology does is it paves the dirt road, puts in a median, and puts in lanes in both directions, even HOV lanes, so that it prioritizes the traffic that needs to get across specifically. So in this scenario here, or in this graphic, you can see the Bigleaf router, and it's pushing traffic out from, whether it's at a home or office, it's pushing traffic out to our servers. We're controlling traffic flow out, and then we're controlling traffic flow in. And you can see in the background how we are separating out that traffic based on traffic type. We actually have 6 levels that we break it up into, but it's like creating lanes on a freeway, and then creating the HOV lanes for the traffic that is most sensitive and most critical. And it's a good high level overview of what the technology does for the internet and why it's so important. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you. I believe you had some things you wanted to share regarding some clients that you have that currently are utilizing us, and share some case studies.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Tim. I think the biggest thing that resonated with me was optimization. And I think that's the thing we've seen from our clients' standpoint, and them really utilizing this technology. A lot of times we always think, yeah, once again, we need more data, we need a bigger pipe, but in all reality, it's not necessarily you need a bigger pipe, you just need to optimize it. And you may have peaks, right? There may be certain times in your organization that you do have spikes, and you do need to have a second connection that can handle that overall bandwidth. But a lot of times it's not necessarily that they need more internet speed. So a lot of times what we've seen in the implementation of SD-WAN is that people will actually, their primary connection, they will reduce the speed of their primary connection, save a few bucks on that, and that will then help afford to pay for SD-WAN and the secondary connection. And so instead of having one just big, super fast pipe, they have two medium pipes and then SD-WAN. But a couple of the scenarios we've seen it really effective. We've seen it really effective in. We had a client that was in an older part of town, an industrial part of town that got renovated. So it's all these super cool, 19th century, 20th, and early 20th century buildings that they turn into office space. Well, of course, all the wiring, all the internet, all the cabling to that part of town is horrible because it was all factories 50 years ago. And so, but a lot of like marketing firms and kind of tech companies are in that space, and a lot of them have internet issues. So one of our clients is in one of those buildings, and forever we just constantly had issues with their internet, and we manage their IT, so we're their IT department, outsourced IT department. And so I couldn't tell you how many times they had either internet issues, and it was just literally they could not get more internet to that building. Like they had multiple connections, or we've tried multiple options, and ultimately they didn't have that optimization. They had most of the time it wasn't even the spikes, right? They didn't actually have the need. It was just having that failover and optimizing the right speed, because they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot going into the building. So they had a VoIP system and a VoIP phone system, and they put in SD-WAN, and they had a lot of the jitter and the issues, because even though they weren't using a whole lot of bandwidth, like I said, overall, but since there wasn't a whole lot coming into the building to begin with, SD-WAN was able to prioritize, hey, those phone calls have to go through. And if somebody is trying to upload, they did a lot of uploading large files to the cloud. They're like, let's slow down the uploads of large files to the cloud and prioritize the phone calls. Mm-hmm. Awesome scenario. It worked super well for them. They still use it to this day. They use Bigleaf as the SD-WAN solution, and it's an awesome scenario. A couple other ones would be, we've had a healthcare provider that has used one really interesting scenario where we actually diverted. So the company allowed us to temporarily divert traffic. So they had multiple locations, and the SD-WAN was allowed us to temporarily divert traffic from one location to another, so that way we could test connectivity issues at that one location. So it was a really cool feature where we're able to have a multi-location connectivity and actually optimize the internet and do testing and things like that for multi-location. That helped us there. Another one would have been, we set it up as a backup solution for their internet, and they got SD-WAN and they paired it with a 4G LTE link, which was like a $45 a month plan that they got for the 4G, and then they got the SD-WAN. It's a really affordable option, and they use it just for outages, for worst case scenario, right? If Comcast goes down or if their primary internet goes down, at least they have that so they can do, whether it's their VoIP calls or their Zoom or their really critical mission critical business functions when it comes from a technology standpoint. And overall, I think we also use it internally. So we're an IT company. We support lots of companies. We have a team, an office here in Portland, and we use it internally, and it's great because we do a lot of tech support. So a lot of our clients are calling us for tech issues or to work on different technology projects. So our phone system, we're probably one of the greatest case studies from our standpoint, just because we are one of the highest users of VoIP phone system being one of them. And then, doing a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of video communication, heavy on the video communication. And then big picture, what we're seeing too is kind of the biggest need is really just mission critical. So currently right now, if you have team members that are working remotely, I think the mission critical team members obviously should be prioritized for an SD-WAN solution. So somebody, if it's a doctor working from home, or if it's, if it's a CEO or somebody that, if their Zoom call drops, or if their file doesn't get uploaded correctly, or whatever the mission critical task you have, SD-WAN is an awesome solution. That being said, we haven't seen it actually being that much of a cost, it is some sort of a technical, you probably have your IT department, you need somebody with a technical knowledge to be able to install it and implement it in your organization. But that being said, the technology is a newer technology, and that's what's cool about it. Is I think it's exciting in the standpoint that it really solves such a critical issue that we have, which is internet reliability. And it does it in such a cool way, and it doesn't cost that much ultimately. Like, it doesn't have to, it's not like getting somebody to put a fiber line into your location, or getting something. There's a lot more expensive ISP and internet related expenditures out there that actually don't do that much for your organization. But SD-WAN, even if you don't even have a second connection, I think is super great as the ability to prioritize internet. So yeah, those are kind of the scenarios we've seen it play and seen it work really well. Ultimately, like I said, mission critical team members that are remote, and then your offices. Ultimately, if you plan to have and are continuing to have a centralized office with things like servers, VoIP phone systems, heavy video conferencing, heavy file storage, heavy cloud access. Ultimately, there's certain organizations out there that really have very simplistic technology needs, right? They could do it all from a Chromebook. But then there's the rest of us that need all the things I just mentioned, right? Either servers or kind of a complex technology stack of cloud-hosted tools. And so as we constantly are accessing the cloud more and more, our dependency on internet reliability is only going up, right? And all the studies show that it was like by 2025, 84% of the internet traffic will be video. 84% of everything that we do on the internet will be video, which is, what are we doing right now, right? We're doing video, and it's awesome. It's super powerful, right? And from a marketing standpoint, from a education standpoint, from a connecting from your team, video is super powerful. But to be able to maintain this and maintain the rest of your organization simultaneously, this takes a lot of bandwidth. And so SD-WAN can be a huge proponent, especially for technologies like video that are super dependent on the internet, and then cloud-hosted tools too, especially as everything just gets pushed into the cloud, which is awesome, right? Like, we are decentralizing all of our networks, so we don't have these, the typical closet of like, I can't tell me times I've gone into a business and gone into the closet, and it's like my closet at home sometimes, right? Where it's just a mess, right? Where we're trying to keep up with the constant changing variables in technology, and it's hard. But thankfully, a lot of that's being pushed to the cloud. That being said, that connection, right? Now that internet, everything is being so dependent on everything going through the internet versus if it was on-prem and you had an on-premise network, you could access all your files, on-premise, which is great. But really the benefits of the cloud, people are being pushed to the cloud for a reason, right? The benefits of the efficiency, the reliability, the collaboration ultimately of the cloud is awesome. So, but our internet reliability needs to be that much more important. So that's kind of our perspective on SD-WAN and how we've seen it from a technology standpoint. Like I said, we work with a lot of small and medium-sized organizations, helping them with their manage their technology. And for those organizations that internet is an issue, and they're having issues with the internet, SD-WAN can be a solution. That being said, there's also other reasons for the other impacts that causes the reliability of the internet, whether it's your router, whether it's your firewall. There's other things, your internet providers, things like that, which I would love to talk about. I'm sure we have some questions from our audience. So if you have any questions, please send them in. I have a couple here that we can dive into, Tim. Do you have anything, Tim, before we switch over to the Q&A that you'd like to touch on?
I would just, the only thing I would share, the importance of the cloud is even more apparent today with the mandatory work from home. The challenges that are being created by people trying to have all their employees access everything from their corporate servers that are on premise is creating a whole nother level of challenges. Whereas for those companies that have already gone to the cloud, that flexibility already exists for them to be able to access their files in a more simplistic way, applications that they're utilizing to basically do their job.
I love it. Yep. Well said. Well said. Cool. Awesome. Well, the first question I have here is, where do you start when you have an internet issue? How do you diagnose the problem? And how do you know SD-WAN is the solution? Go for it, Tim.
Yeah, really, there's a challenge with diagnosing what the problem is just with standard internet issues, because outside of calling the internet provider, there are some tools that, that IT can provide to do some monitoring of the internet. But really, until you put in an SD-WAN device, many times we'll tell people that are saying, hey, I'm experiencing something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if what you have will fix it. There are times we'll say, hey, let's get our equipment out there. We'll give you a 30-day free trial, let you test it to see what's going on with your connection. Because with a tool like what we have, we give you full visibility into everything going on. Without that, I can tell you, now granted it was consumer, but I called my cable internet provider and I was like, I'm having so many issues with my internet. I had more data on what was going on than them, and they had no idea how to fix it. They're like, okay, we'll send you a modem. I still have the same problems because the problems are with their network out where I live. I'm kind of rural. So,
sure.
Which is why I have two connections.
And I'm excited for you to show us a live demo at the end for us to see that. That'll be cool. And I completely agree. I think it is hard to ultimately diagnose internet issues because there could be a myriad of problems. But if you go up the pipe, right? If you look at your end user, if it's your smartphone, your laptop, whatever it may be, that's obviously connected to some sort of access point or router, which is then connected to the internet at some point, whether it's through a firewall or through other areas. And so really, SD-WAN, I believe, ultimately can help diagnose any one of those issues and through the entire pipe, right? And help you realize, okay, is it your access point, right? Maybe your Wi-Fi is just poor, or maybe it's not strong enough, right? Maybe you need maybe a high density access point because you're doing a lot of traffic over the access point, or maybe it's the internet, right? Maybe it's your ISPs, maybe it's your internet providers like Comcast or Spectrum that are either failing to provide you the service that they promised, right? Like they're actually just crashing a lot. But you wouldn't know that unless you had some sort of analytics, unless you had some sort of history of seeing what's coming into the pipe and being like, hey, Comcast, hey, Spectrum, you're actually not giving us what you guaranteed to give us. So it helps you diagnose that. But really, I think ultimately a way to answer that question, or a way to know when SD-WAN is a way, when to evaluate it, is when you're having that ISP problem ultimately, right? Like when you know, hey, I can't rely on my ISP, and I know that that's the problem, like Comcast or Spectrum, then SD-WAN is like, okay, that's kind of a green light for sure. But then if you're having a ton of other internet issues, SD-WAN can help evaluate as well. That being said, your IT department or whoever is managing your IT, whoever built your network, knows all the components of your network and knows all those pieces, and then can walk you through like, hey, is it the computer, right? Because sometimes computers, it's the speed of the computer. It actually can't receive the internet, right? Or whatever the issue. So it can be a lot of different reasons why you're having internet issues. But a good failover, and from my perspective, is if you're having ISP problems and internet provider problems, SD-WAN, like a solution like Bigleaf, is something you should review.
Definitely.
Next question is privacy concerns related. What all the data is going to your guys' infrastructure and to your network. How do I know it's secure? Yeah.
It's a great question. We actually, now many SD-WAN solutions out there actually have security or a firewall built into them. We don't. We sit outside the firewall. And technically what we do, we're an upgrade to the internet. So we read the traffic headers on every data packet to know what type of traffic it is, but we're not actually looking down at the traffic level as far as what the individual packets are. Like, we don't see what websites people visit or where that traffic is going from a security environment. We are passing traffic just like the internet does. In general, we're just adding a layer of intelligence, and we're reading the traffic types so that we know the Zoom call gets prioritized, my VoIP phone gets prioritized, my CRM system versus what I'm about to show with the streaming. So we're not getting down into that level where we're actually digging into what is being transmitted to where it would have a security issue. We are literally passing traffic just like the internet, and the firewall is handling the security.
Got it. Cool. Can you elaborate, Tim, on from just your organizational standpoint? Obviously, you guys are the data is going through your guys' fingers, just like it does throughout the internet. How if somebody were for you guys to have a breach, how does that look like, or for what type of security measures have you guys taken place to make sure people's traffic, you guys don't have any sort of breach?
To my knowledge, we haven't had any type of a breach on our network. We have several things in place. Actually, one of the things that's interesting, one of the things people are concerned about today is DDoS attacks. Denial of service, where they're attacking us with a flood of traffic.
Right.
And one of the things I found interesting, we have some third-party partners we work with on that, but our QoS, when you get on a large level on our backbone, we're able to divert some of that without it becoming any issue, just because of how we manage traffic control. And that was surprising to me. But as far as the security on our backbone, we are, I don't have the details, but we are utilizing best of breed security. The firewall is securing the customer at their premise level. We're leveraging internet providers out of our gateways to be able to pass traffic from our backbone back out to the internet. And then we have multiple providers that we have connecting all of our backbone together.
Great. That's great. Great answer. Thank you. The 6 levels, the next question, 6 levels. It looks like you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the 6 different criteria. Can you elaborate on those?
Yeah, so every other SD-WAN solution, you have to manually prioritize or deprioritize traffic. And you have to say, okay, give this application priority over everything else. And the problem with that is it's only as good as what you know is going over your network. And in talking to IT professionals today, the greatest challenge they have with this cloud explosion is different department heads are spinning up applications and they're never letting IT know. Where we're different, we automate QoS. The reason we read the traffic headers on every data packet, we drop it into one of 6 levels of QoS, starting with voice, because voice is the most sensitive traffic over the internet. Any type of internet degradation, whether it be losing data packets or whether it be jitter on the line or even latency, where the traffic, it takes longer to get somewhere, it has the greatest impact on voice. So we put that at the top. Right below that, we put what's called high priority interactive, which would be like this Zoom call. So the only thing takes priority over this video would be an actual VoIP phone, and the actual amount of data used to transmit my voice over the internet is incredibly minimal. So after the high priority interactive, we have medium priority interactive, which would be like SaaS applications, like Office 365, remote desktop. So, video is taking precedence over that because this is more sensitive traffic. And if you have problems with the visual, it's going to be a lot easier to see than if you have milliseconds of issues with connecting to your desktop. Below that would be what is labeled low priority interactive, like VPN tunnels. And we can even prioritize traffic within VPN tunnels, where normally it's all encrypted. If there's voice going through that, we can actually prioritize the voice within the tunnel. Under that is bulk data, which is what I'm about to show you, which is any type of streaming or bulk download, Microsoft patch updates, things like that. And then the last level, number 6, is anything not labeled above. So anything that does not fall into the categories above.
Got it. Nice. Super helpful. Thanks, Tim. Great. Next question is cost. What does it cost? And then for SD-WAN, and then what is it kind of aggregated between all the different solutions? What have we seen for the cost? So Tim, can you talk about SD-WAN, the cost of SD-WAN, and then from your experience, kind of the overall cost of like adding a second connection and adding SD-WAN, and then I can share from our experience as well.
Yeah. So cost is dependent upon the throughput, or if you have multiple circuits, the aggregate throughput. And for instance, we have clients that will have, let's just say 2 100 meg circuits, 100 megs upload, 100 megs download. But some of them have only ever had them as a primary and a backup. And so they might only need 100 megs of throughput. So what we would do in that scenario is we would say, okay, we're going to give you 100 megs of throughput. If you need to increase it, you can. But now we're using both connections at the same time. Even though there's a total of 200 megs, we're only pushing 100 at any point because they never go above, let's say, 70 or 80 or 60. It's just they need that redundant circuit. Likewise, we've had customers in that same boat with 200 meg connections that they need the full aggregate throughput, and we put them on our 250 plan because we go from 100 to 250. Now, from a cost perspective, our plans go all the way from a 20 by 20 on the business side, all the way up to 20 megs by 20 megs, all the way up to 3 gigs by 3 gigs. And we deploy service on a 100 meg router, a gig router, and a 10 gig router. And it gets more expensive based on how much throughput because it's utilizing our bandwidth on our backbone. So just like your internet connection, the cost goes up based on how much bandwidth you need at your home or office. Same thing with us, because we're taking that internet provider and we're leveraging them to get from the office or home to our backbone. And then once they get to our backbone, they're using our network to traverse their traffic. So they're utilizing our bandwidth. So it goes up exponentially. But the cost and price, rather than list out 10 packages, we have on the business side, our most are most popular or most prevalent, the ones the majority of people need just in general, are the 100 by 100 and 250 by 250. We do have some that are heavy data users that need a gig or 2 gig, but on average, we have some below. And our 100 by 100 is $199 a month. 250 by 250 is $299 a month. So it is, in a lot of cases, less than what you would pay for the internet connections you're connecting to, especially if you talk about dedicated fiber connections. But traditionally, you do see that with, say, adding an SD-WAN and then maybe adding a secondary connection like a broadband. Maybe you have a dedicated or a shared fiber connection and then you want a broadband for redundancy. Usually adding that in SD-WAN will double the cost. But to give you the quality and to be able to run your business the way that you need to, it's worth adding that cost, because typically what happens when there's an outage, you lose more money than what you're spending on that. I'll share just on a side note. I was talking with a client recently that they're like, we do everything in the cloud. We have hosted voice. We have all of our infrastructure in the cloud. We're doing everything in the cloud. I go, okay, so what are you doing for your internet? I have one internet connection. What do you do when the internet goes down? I send everybody home.
Wow.
That's not productive. They're
Right.
losing the day of work. So to pay for the SD-WAN and the second connection is obviously a lot less cost than sending everybody home. On the consumer side, the pricing, we have 2 plans. We have 150 by 20. So now we're getting into those asynchronous where it's 150 download, 20 meg upload. So it kind of mirrors the broadband solutions you have for home. That's $99 a month. And then we have a 1 gigabit by 100 megabit for those that have like the gigablast at home or whatever the cable provider calls it.
Sure.
We have a 1 gig by 100 meg that's $199 a month.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's helpful. And I can relate from our experience as far as price and understanding understanding how it compares. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of times where to use your example, right? If you have 25 employees and you have 200 megabit connections, you may not need that, right? You may only have one spike during the day at 11 o'clock when everyone's on the phone, or you need more internet. And then that's where, if you had an SD-WAN with a smaller secondary connection, you could help with that overflow. Or like you said, if you have an outage, you can have that secondary connection. But most of the time what we're seeing is not people going in and having having whatever internet they had before. Usually what it is people have their current internet, they reduce whatever plan they currently had, and then get a secondary plan and then put SD-WAN on top of that. That helps mitigate the costs. Then that's also what they need ultimately. And if they want to grow from there, then obviously they can increase their agreement with their ISP or with their different ISPs. And as their organization grows, they can grow from there. But and then from the home office standpoint, if you're at home, you may not actually need a secondary connection, but you want that optimization, right? You want to make sure that if all the kids are playing video games or watching Netflix or whatever, that you want to make sure your Zoom call goes through. You actually don't need a second connection. You actually have reliable internet. For example, at my house, I have super great internet. I live in the city. It's super reliable. I live by myself. I don't have that requirement. But if my girlfriend was watching a movie or something like that, and there was some sort of situation where I wanted to prioritize internet, that's where I could see personally for me, it's like, well, that's super important, right? I want to be able to have that I don't need a second connection. I actually have enough bandwidth coming into the building and it's super reliable, but I want to make sure that if I am spiking, right, if I am having in on a Zoom call or doing something, then I never have any issues and I can prioritize it, because there's a lot of things going on in our computers and in our home offices and in our offices in general. And like we've talked about, it's not necessarily about, you don't necessarily need more bandwidth. It's about how do you optimize it? How do you prioritize which parts are important, right? Because not all of it's important. And there's so much stuff that's going on in our computers that half the time we don't realize is going on in the background that should be prioritized. And I love what you mentioned too. I know we're short on time. We want to get to that demo before we wrap up here. But I loved your scenario in regards to just prioritizing data, and that you guys work with third parties on how to prioritize data, right? Work with the vendors on making sure, hey, we know that Zoom calls look like this. Let's make sure those go through. Or we know book calls look like this. We know all the different providers. That way we can make sure they get prioritized. Because right now, it's like we're all just fighting with everyone else on the internet, right? Like, and I'm fighting with all my neighbors and everyone in my city and everyone in the world ultimately, right? To get our own little piece and to make sure my stuff gets through. And I'm oversimplifying and blowing it out of proportion at the same time. But at the same time, you get what I'm saying as far as having the ability just to prioritize and having that extra level of service, because it is like the most important thing is to make sure our internet's reliable and things are working. So great. Awesome. Before, thanks for all those good questions. And before we switch it over, Tim, do you have anything else before we want to do the live demo? Anything else you'd like to touch?
Yeah, the last thing I would share, because obviously we are all hopeful that, we can get back to business as usual, which I don't know that it will ever quite be as usual after what we're going through, but we are offering the home office packages on a month-to-month. We don't want to lock people into long-term agreements with it. We have a month-to-month or a one-year term, but we do want to solve problems that people are having. I can tell you, I've worked out of a home office off and on for last 13, 14 years. And I've worked for VoIP providers in the industry. And when I didn't have a QoS device, when my kids were home during the summer, it got really bad, and they would be streaming Netflix or whatever. So I have not had a problem in the last year that I have been with Bigleaf and had a Bigleaf router in my home office. I have yet to have a problem being able to operate business, not even once.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I think to your point, if you are working from home, or if you do have mission critical team members that are working from home right now, but they eventually will move back to the office, you can put in SD-WAN and then transition it to the office, or it's month to month. So you could put it in for the next 6 months while your mission critical team is in. And then as they move back to your headquarters or your traditional office, you can then just have a SD-WAN for the traditional office, which I think is a great, awesome strategy, because ultimately, as things change, right, you may, that in a year or two, that may reverse, right? You may actually want to send people out remote again, and then send them out with SD-WAN and blessings, and your remote team can be that much more effective.
Completely.
Love it. Cool. Well, we got 10 minutes here. Let's show them SD-WAN in action. Some of you may have saw a demo video on our website or on the registration page, but we'd love to show it to you again. So Tim, kind of tell us what we're looking at and walk us through what we're about to see.
Yeah, so I started this a couple of minutes ago while we were talking. Essentially, we have 3 different streaming sessions going on simultaneously while you and I are talking. We got Peppa Pig, because I have a 4-year-old. Star Wars, because I think the only person that I know that doesn't like Star Wars is my wife. And then at the bottom we have Jimmy Neutron, because I have older kids that this was one of their favorite shows when they were little. So
tell me, we have right now too in your home office. Tell me about your home office internet, because I don't think the audience knows about what your internet, how many internets you have going, and what you have set up, and because right now this is a lot going on, right? Like, we're talking over Zoom. You have 3 videos playing, and then you have the rest of your home office. So what's first of all, what's maintaining all of this? And then
so I'm going to in just a moment show you, but just to talk to it, I have a cable internet circuit. It's 150 megs by 5 megs, so it's a big download pipe.
Okay.
And that's, when it's working, that's what all the streaming in the house is going on. And then I have a very small DSL as a backup. That's a 12 meg by 896K DSL, barely enough to power this Zoom session. And yet what I'm going to do in a moment is come off the screen share. I'm going to keep everything streaming just to show, but I want you to be able to see in a larger window. I'm going to pull the cable plug, which is my big internet connection. You're going to see things pause for about a second as it's failing over to the DSL. And then it will come back and we will be communicating just as normal, and you'll just have a blip of a second or two, but we will remain connected and be able to communicate the entire time.
Cool. And you're using obviously your home office SD-WAN solution.
Yeah.
You mentioned that's working with the two connections. You have your big connection, you have your large connection coming in, then you have your small backup connection, then you have SD-WAN on top, and then you're about to pull the large internet that's obviously running all your videos and running this call.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the monitor from falling off my
I love it
here. But so you can see a little bit here. This big modem is my cable modem, and this yellow Ethernet cord is going into it. And then I have my CenturyLink DSL modem with the little green cable. And then this white cable is going down to a Wi-Fi router that feeds the house.
Nice.
And so that is my network here. But I'm going to go ahead and pull the yellow cable. It'll pause for a minute, and then we'll keep talking. I'll still hear you. It's just going to take a second for my side to come back.
Great. Awesome.
So
hey, there you are. Hey.
Yeah. Hey, there we go. And you can still see the streaming going on.
Wow, that's amazing. That's super cool. So we just switched over, so everyone knows, we were on the 150 meg large internet, fast internet pipe that was running everything. And then we switched over. Can you show them your screen so we can see the YouTube videos and see how they're running? Because everything's running off the 12 meg, right? Right now?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. It actually is pretty clear. I'm surprised at the level of clarity on a 12 meg connection while we're on video.
The awesome thing about this is like the audio quality. Ultimately, so put yourself in a situation, you obviously just pulled the plug, right? So that means, Comcast just had a huge outage, right? And you're on a Zoom call, or you're doing a webinar like what we're doing right now. And you're on a Zoom call and then Comcast goes down. So, if you do have, obviously there'll be some sputter, but your audio quality will still going, and obviously it's still streaming and everything's going great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Super cool. That's great. Very cool. Well, thanks, Tim, for showing that. And ultimately, I think that just shows how seamless the SD-WAN technology is. It really helps be able to create just that super reliable internet, so that if the plug does get pulled, or if Comcast does have an outage, or if you just think sputter, right? Internet sputters. That's the other thing too. We have this constant up and down where it's not linear, right? And it's always going up and down. And so when that happens, you even have a second connection that can kind of prioritize traffic from one over to the other. That's great.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Great, Tim. Well, thank you so much for showing that. It was great talking to you today. And thanks everyone for attending. Once again, this webinar will be recorded. So if you want a copy of it, we'll be releasing in the next couple of days. Tim, what's the best way to get a hold of us?
Yeah, ultimately, it would be to reach out to Northwest Techs. Yeah, so I was going to just throw it back up here.
Nice. Well, the best way, yeah, totally. I think the best way probably is to go through us. So Bigleaf is an SD-WAN provider. If your IT department or whoever is interested in SD-WAN, we can definitely, we're a reseller and an implementer of Bigleaf. So we can help implement it and resell it for you. If you just have IT questions in general, or if you have technology questions, or you're like, hey, I don't know if it's an end user problem. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi problem. I don't know if it's an ISP problem. I don't know if I need SD-WAN. Just help us navigate this. I don't have a technology provider or an IT team that can help do that. Feel free to reach out to us. And then ultimately we can connect you with Bigleaf if it's a solution that we think is the best fit. And feel free to reach out to those numbers, or you can also follow up with my information when we set up recordings in the next couple days. Tim, once again, thank you so much for your time. This was super fun working with you. I'm excited to work with Bigleaf and use your guys' awesome technology with our clients and future clients. Thanks everyone for your time watching today, and everyone be well, be safe, and take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Taylor. Bye-bye.